All right, so we're diving into the 1 Minute Manager. You shared this book with us, and we're excited to, really unpack its secrets to like effective leadership, all without, the usual complexity.
It is really fascinating how this book just kind of cuts through all the noise and focuses on that human element of management. It's a refreshing change from all those like overly theoretical approaches that are out there.
Totally. And it kicks off with this like really relatable story, right? Like this young guy who's on this quest to find a truly effective manager.
Yeah.
He's talking to everybody, like CEOs, military leaders. He just can't seem to find that like magic formula for leadership success.
And that's where the 1 Minute Manager comes in.
Right.
Like it's a character who challenges that traditional image of like a high-powered leader.
Right.
And his approach, I mean, at first glance, it seems almost too simple. Like, is this for real?
Right. He's not like this intimidating figure, locked away in a corner office.
Yeah.
Instead, he's like surprisingly accessible.
Yeah.
And his office reflects that, like calm, organized, kind of signaling this different approach to leadership.
Exactly. And this is where that first secret, that 1 minute goal setting, really takes center stage. The 1 Minute Manager, I mean, he truly believes in eliminating ambiguity right from the get-go.
Okay.
Every single goal is clearly defined, written down, 250 words or less, basically, something you can read and digest in, you guessed it, a minute.
So no more guessing games about like expectations or wondering if you're on the right track.
Precisely. It's about setting those crystal clear goals collaboratively. So everybody's on the same page. Everyone understands what good actually looks like from like day one. And this is crucial, it's not about documenting every single task. Remember that whole 80-20 rule.
Right. That 20% of your effort often drives 80% of your results.
Exactly.
Okay.
This manager, he zeroes in on those vital few goals, that critical 20% that will have the most significant impact.
Okay, I see where you're going with this.
And it goes beyond just, identifying those goals. He makes sure everyone understands the performance standards that are tied to them.
So it's like, here's what we're aiming for.
Yeah.
And here's exactly what success looks like.
Exactly. No room for interpretation, no room for miscommunication. And it's amazing how this approach then empowers his team to actually solve problems independently.
Oh.
There's this great anecdote about an employee named Trenell. Trenell calls him up with a problem.
Let me guess. So instead of just handing him the solution on the silver platter, the 1 Minute Manager guides Trenell to, like, figure it out himself.
You got it. He basically asks Trenell to define the problem, but like in these concrete, measurable terms. It's about encouraging that solutions-oriented mindset, right? Instead of just dwelling on the issue itself.
That makes a lot of sense. It's about giving your team those tools and that trust to solve those problems independently. Do you think that's something that's lacking in a lot of workplaces today, that empowerment piece?
Absolutely. I mean, micromanagement, it's often the norm. But this book really pushes for that more hands-off approach that truly fosters ownership and problem-solving skills.
Okay, I'm already seeing how this 1 Minute Manager thing can be a game changer. But what about positive reinforcement? I mean, everybody loves a good pat on the back, right?
Exactly. And that brings us to the second secret, 1-minute praisings.
Okay.
Think about your own workplace for a second. How often do you genuinely see managers praising their team members?
Honestly, not enough.
Right.
It's always about what needs fixing, what went wrong, rarely about celebrating those wins, big or small.
That's precisely what the 1-minute manager wants to flip on its head.
Okay.
He's actively looking for opportunities to catch people doing something right, even the seemingly small things.
Okay.
And his motto kind of sums it up perfectly. Help people reach their full potential. Catch them doing something right.
I love that. It's about creating that culture of appreciation, that positive reinforcement. But what does this 1-minute praising actually look like in practice?
It's about immediate, specific, and genuine praise.
Okay.
Not just empty flattery, but really truly recognizing a job well done. It's a quick but very powerful way to boost morale and truly motivate your team.
So instead of waiting for the dreaded performance review to point out what went well, you're appreciating those everyday wins in real time.
Exactly. And the book illustrates this beautifully with this young employee named Mr. Levy.
Okay.
He's initially a little unnerved by the manager's constant observation, but he soon realizes that it's all about catching him doing something right. Talk about a confidence booster, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Okay, so I can already see how that would make a huge difference. It's about creating that positive feedback loop that just encourages that continued like growth and improvement, right?
Precisely. And what's remarkable is that it only takes a minute. This manager, he truly understands the power of those small intentional actions that can have, a genuinely huge impact on motivation and morale.
Mm-hmm.
And here's where it gets interesting. Our, skeptical friend in the book, he decides to do a little investigating of his own.
Okay.
He's like digging into the performance data of the 1 Minute Managers team, almost like hoping to find some hidden flaw, right?
Yeah.
It's like it can't be this simple.
Right, like what's the catch?
Exactly. But what he uncovers is actually pretty compelling. Despite having like older equipment than other teams, the 1 Minute Managers team consistently outperforms every other branch in the entire company.
Wow.
Like they're efficient, they're effective, and get this, they have a really high turnover rate.
Wait, hold on. High turnover. Isn't that usually like a red flag? I mean, that doesn't exactly scream healthy work environment.
You'd think so, right? But here's the twist. That high turnover, it's actually a testament to the 1 Minute Manager's effectiveness.
Really?
People are leaving, yes, but they're not leaving because they're unhappy. They're leaving because they're being promoted, like taking on bigger roles, spreading their wings, so to speak.
So it's like a leadership incubator. They're learning these like incredibly valuable skills and then taking them out into the world.
Exactly.
Wow.
The 1 Minute Manager is practically single-handedly raising the bar for leadership within the entire organization.
Wow.
There's even this anecdote about a seasoned executive, Miss Gomez, who's, she's struggling to keep up in her own role. And she even admits that she wishes she had learned these, like, simple but powerful techniques, earlier in her own career.
That's a pretty powerful endorsement. I mean, if a seasoned executive sees the value in this, there's got to be something to be said for this, like, back-to-basics approach.
Absolutely. And it just highlights the universality of these principles, right? It doesn't matter if you're just starting out or you're a seasoned leader. Clear goals, that positive reinforcement, and, and that direct feedback they're fundamental to success.
Okay, so we've covered the goals, we've covered the praise, but what about the elephant in the room,
Yeah.
Criticism. Let's face it, nobody really enjoys giving or receiving negative feedback, right? But that's where that third secret comes in. 1 minute reprimands.
This is the one that often raises a few eyebrows, right?
Right.
We're so conditioned to, avoid conflict, to shy away from delivering tough news. But this book argues that, when it's done effectively, these reprimands can be incredibly valuable.
So it's not about being like mean or tearing someone down. It's about addressing those mistakes head on and using them as opportunities for growth and, improvement.
Exactly. And they illustrate this through this highly competent employee, Miss Brown.
Okay.
Now, Mrs. Brown, she's a top performer. She rarely makes mistakes. But when she does, the 1 Minute Manager doesn't shy away from addressing it, like directly.
So it's about establishing that even those star players, they're not exempt from feedback, that everyone can benefit from a little, course correction now and then.
Precisely. And it highlights another, crucial point. 1 minute reprimands are most effective when they're part of a system that already emphasizes those clear goals and consistent praise.
Right.
It's not about creating this culture of fear. It's about addressing mistakes constructively within a framework of, positive reinforcement.
Okay, so, how does this 1 minute reprimand actually work? I imagine it takes a pretty delicate touch to deliver that criticism without, demotivating someone.
It does. And the book, it kind of breaks it down into a clear process.
Oh,
just like those 1 minute praisings, it's about immediacy and specificity. The manager addresses the issue right away, focusing solely on the behavior, not the person.
So no beating around the bush.
Yeah.
No sugarcoating the message.
Exactly. It's like rip the Band-Aid off, get straight to the point. But, and this is crucial, that second half of the reprimand is just as important as the first.
Okay.
Just as important as that, tough love is that reaffirmation of the person's inherent value.
Okay.
It's like saying, look, I'm disappointed in your actions, but I still believe in you.
That's an important distinction. It's not about attacking someone's character. It's about addressing a specific behavior and then reinforcing their worth.
Precisely. And it's amazing how, just a subtle shift in approach can make all the difference. The book even talks about laughing at mistakes.
Okay, laughing at mistakes. Now, I'll admit that one threw me for a loop at first. It seems kind of risky, but I could see how it could work. If you have that foundation of trust and mutual respect already established.
Exactly. It's about creating that psychological safety net, that space where people feel comfortable taking risks, knowing that even if they, stumble a bit, they'll be supported, not ridiculed.
So it's about creating that culture of like learning and growth where mistakes are seen as like opportunities, not, failures.
Exactly. And this is where the 1 Minute Manager, he kind of addresses the skepticism that a lot of readers might be feeling at this point.
Okay.
Throughout the book, the young man keeps asking, like, why? Why does this work? He's skeptical, just like, we might be.
Yeah.
So the 1 Minute Manager, he uses this brilliant analogy about bowling to illustrate his point.
Okay, a bowling analogy. I'm intrigued. How does that tie into, effective management?
Well, it's a really great way to illustrate how frustrating and demotivating it can be when the goals and the feedback are unclear.
Okay.
Imagine you're bowling, but there's a sheet over the pins.
Okay.
You can hear the crash, right? But you have absolutely no idea what you accomplished, how many you knocked down, or even if you hit the target at all.
Okay, that sounds incredibly frustrating. Like you're just like blindly throwing this ball into the void and just hoping for the best.
Exactly. And the 1 Minute Manager argues that so many workplaces operate in a similar way.
Yeah.
They keep people in the dark about their goals, about their progress, and then they wonder why they're not hitting those targets. But the 1 Minute Manager, he takes a very different approach.
He lifts that sheet. Right, like he makes those goals crystal clear. He provides that constant feedback, good and the the not so good, so everyone knows exactly what they're aiming for and how they're doing.
And that brings us to another really crucial aspect of this whole 1 Minute Manager philosophy. It's challenging that normal distribution curve mentality, that whole idea that some people are just destined to succeed and others are, they're just destined to fail.
Right, that whole bell curve idea that's often used to justify a certain level of mediocrity.
Exactly.
Like we're just stuck in the system where some people have to lose for others to win.
Exactly. And the 1 Minute Manager, he throws that idea right out the window. Yeah. He believes that everyone has that potential to be a winner, that everyone on his team can excel if they're given the right tools and support.
So it's a much more optimistic and empowering view of human potential, but that traditional rank and yank approach that a lot of organizations they still cling to, right?
Absolutely. It's about creating that culture of growth, development, where everyone feels valued, feels supported in reaching their full potential.
Right.
And it all comes back to this fundamental belief that people, they're an organization's most valuable asset.
Yeah.
They're not just cogs in a machine.
I'm really struck by how this book really reframes our whole perception of what effective management looks like. It's not about wielding power or, micromanaging every single detail. It's about empowering your team, giving them the tools to succeed, and then honestly getting out of their way.
Yeah. And recognizing that, even with the best of intentions, that idea of 1 minute reprimands, that directness of criticism, it can raise some ethical concern.
Right. That nagging question, is this just a subtle form of manipulation?
Yeah.
I mean, that's something our skeptical friend in the book, he really grapples with, right?
Yeah, absolutely. He's worried that this is just a sneaky way to control people, to make them conform. But the 1 Minute Manager's response is really crucial here. It's all about transparency and consent.
Meaning you're upfront about your expectations right from the get-go.
Right.
There are no hidden agendas, no surprises when it comes to feedback.
Exactly. It's about establishing those clear guidelines, expectations from the start, so everybody understands the rules of the game, so to speak.
Right.
And they actually use a really fascinating historical anecdote about a Chinese emperor to kind of drive home this point.
Oh, I love a good historical analogy.
Yeah.
So what's the emperor's story?
So this emperor, he decides he wants to be seen as this benevolent ruler. So he tries to delegate all punishments to his ministers. He's thinking hey, if I'm not the one delivering the bad news, people will like me more.
Yeah. Sounds like a classic case of misguided intention.
Exactly. But as you might imagine, it backfires spectacularly. The people see right through his facade, and it's the minister, the one who's been firm but fair all along, who ultimately earns their respect and their loyalty.
It's a good reminder that authenticity, that integrity, that they matter, especially in those leadership positions, right?
Absolutely. And it's not just about ancient history either.
Right.
The book, it draws parallels to other fields where these similar techniques are actually used quite effectively, like crisis intervention, for example.
Really? That's fascinating. How so?
Well, think about the principles we've been discussing.
Yeah.
Clear, direct feedback, expressing your feelings honestly, and reaffirming that person's inherent worth. I mean, those are all core principles in crisis intervention as well.
Yeah.
It's about helping someone regain that sense of control, that sense of agency during a really difficult time.
Right. It's amazing how these like seemingly simple principles can be applied in such like different contexts.
And it just speaks to their fundamental effectiveness in shaping behavior, fostering those healthy relationships, even parenting. When you think about it, it shares some similarities with the 1-minute manager's approach.
It's true.
Yeah.
Setting those clear boundaries, praising that good behavior, and then addressing, the not so good behavior promptly, directly. I mean, those are all like hallmarks of effective parenting.
Exactly. It highlights the universality of these principles and how they can be, adapted to different aspects of life, really.
So after this, whirlwind deep dive into the 1-minute manager's secrets, our skeptical friend in the book, I mean, he's understandably impressed. In fact, he's so taken with this approach that he ends up joining the 1-minute manager's team.
He does, and not just joining, he eventually becomes a 1-minute manager himself.
Wow.
Like embodying those principles, spreading that knowledge throughout the organization.
That's a pretty powerful testament to the idea that effective leadership, it can be learned, it can be shared. It's not about some innate charisma or mystical quality. It's about like adopting these practical, easy to implement techniques, right?
Yeah. And what's really impactful is how the book actually ends. It ends on this note of possibility.
Right.
It leaves you with this lingering question. If the seemingly simple approach can transform a workplace, what could it do for your team, for your own leadership journey?
It's a powerful call to action. It's an invitation to experiment with these techniques and see what kind of impact they can have on your own life, right?
And in today's fast-paced, constantly connected world where distractions are everywhere and our attention spans are shrinking, this emphasis on clear communication, that immediate feedback and that genuine human connection, I mean, it might be even more relevant today than ever before.
It's a compelling thought, isn't it? Maybe the key to navigating all the complexities of modern life and work is really just embracing those simple but powerful principles.
Right. Maybe it's about recognizing those 1-minute moments, those seemingly small interactions that can have such a profound impact on our relationships, our productivity, and ultimately our success.
So as you go about your day-to-day, think about those intentional actions that you can take, those 1-minute goals that you can set, those 1-minute praisings you can offer, and yes, even those 1-minute reprimands, delivered with empathy and respect.
Because in the end, it's those seemingly, insignificant moments that often add up to the most meaningful and the most lasting changes.
And that's the true legacy of the 1-minute manager, right?
Yeah.
It's reminding us that effective leadership, at its core, it's about, human connection. It's about empowering others to reach their full potential.
It is. And that's a message that I think remains timelessly relevant.